There's a good chance that at some point you've experienced the following scenario. You're driving down the road, maybe on the way home from work, or maybe you're going to a store, and you see someone standing at the upcoming intersection holding a sign that says something like, "My family is going through a tough time and we can't pay rent. Anything helps." Or it could be someone who is homeless or maybe a disabled veteran. As you approach the intersection, your light turns red. So what do? Obviously, there's something hard going on in this person's life because otherwise they wouldn't be there. So maybe you think about giving them some money, but then you wonder, is that just enabling them to keep coming back? Does it really even help? But if you don't do anything to help, are you just being calloused and hard-hearted? And maybe, they really need something and they're going to be experiencing extreme lack if you don't do anything. So as you're thinking through this, you try to also avoid eye contact because you don't want them to think you're going to give them any money and be disappointed if you aren't sure you really want to do that. But then you also feel bad because they're probably ignored every single day and most people don't even bother to make eye contact. Suddenly, your light turns green and you try to put on your best compassionate smile that says, "Sorry about whatever you're going through," and you drive away. But as you drive away, you feel guilty, wishing you could have done something to really help. If that scenario resonates with you at all, and that's an exact situation I've been in before, then this episode is for you. Today, I'm talking to Thomas Bellomo, Executive Director of Love INC Newberg, and Love INC stands for Love in the Name of Christ. So Love INC partners with local churches and nonprofits to help people not just get through the day, but to help transform their lives and help these people experience lasting change. Now, Love INC, as you might have guessed, is a Christian organization, and there's a couple times where we get a little bit into the theological weeds, so to speak, because understanding who Jesus is kind of important to understanding the "in the name of Christ" part of Love INC. So if religion is not your thing, just hang with us because there's still a lot of great content here for you too. Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts. I'm a local realtor in Newberg. I'm a member of the Newberg Noon Rotary Club, an ambassador for our local Chamber of Commerce, a City Club member, and I also have a separate YouTube channel about Newberg and real estate. I love this town. I love helping people move here. I love working with people to help buy and sell their homes. But one of the things I'm really passionate about is sharing about all of the great organizations and people who make this town the great place that it is. And that's really what this podcast is all about. To share stories that inspire people in Newberg and help them understand what makes this place so special. It's also a passion of mine to help encourage people to get involved, find something that they are passionate about, and ultimately have hope for our future. So I hope you enjoy today's conversation with Thomas Bellomo as we talk about Love INC. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to sharing more about Love INC and all that you guys are up to.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and I'm excited to share a little bit about what we do.
Well, it's kind of a unique opportunity for me because I get to talk to many nonprofits in the area. But Love INC is the one organization I actually spend my personal time volunteering at. So it holds a special place in my heart. And actually, a couple years ago, when Yvette was the executive director there, actually this podcast was still called the LP's Project, we had an interview kind of about this. So, but you're a more recent addition to the Love INC team. So I know we'll talk about a little bit Love INC and how it got started, but just for people listening who don't know you, especially maybe if they've been in the community for a while, they're like, who's this Thomas character? So you're the executive director now, and share how that happened.
I am,
briefly.
Yes.
So it's a long story.
It is. It's a long story. But I've been the executive director now since January 2nd. So starting to come up on 6 months now, starting to get, a better understanding and of what specifically this organization is doing in the community. I'm really excited to be here. I grew up in the Willamette Valley, so I'm familiar with the area, but I've been gone for the last, about 13 years. So my family and I have always wanted to return. So this was a great opportunity to come back and be back in the area of country that we really love. So,
and your background is both, you have business and kind of a pastoral background, right?
I do. So my last position, I was an associate pastor in Northern California. And before that, I was a business owner in the construction industry.
Yeah, which kind of lends itself when you're running a nonprofit. You have to have that business side. Obviously, there's the heart side of it too. So that's a little bit about you. Now, Love INC, you're newer to it, but you've had the experience of the last 6 months, and I'm sure of kind of prior to that, I feel like your heart was probably being prepared for this kind of work. But for people who maybe aren't familiar with Love INC or they've heard of it, they don't really know much about it, can you share about Loving, just kind of its role here, or maybe just start how it got started and then its role here in Newberg.
Sure. So we officially became a 501c3 status in 2004. So we're going to be coming up on our 20-year anniversary pretty soon. And it got started by a group of individuals and pastors in the community that recognized that there was a need to help people in need in a more efficient way than what was currently happening. And so that's where the discovery route happened of Why Love Inc. specifically, because it is a national organization, and there's over, I believe it's 136 affiliates through the country now, and they're starting to open affiliates in Africa as well. So it's a proven model that works. You know, we say that we exist to mobilize the local churches to transform lives and communities in the name of Christ. So we're here to be a partner of churches that looks at the need in the community in a little bit of a different way of saying, how do we help these people? How can we combine our resources? How can we diversify our skills and talents and bring them that diversity together to have a bigger impact?
Yeah, and several years ago, I was interviewing someone, and they mentioned something to me that has really resonated with me. Is that often we look at ways to help people, but Love Inc., even in its name, it's focused on love. And what this woman said to me was, don't look at how you can help someone, look at how you can love them, because sometimes those two are not the same. And that's one of the things I really appreciate is when we think about if this was our own child or our own sibling, how would we respond differently than just someone we see on the side of the street? And I love the model. I know we'll be talking about this a little bit more, but can you share about your role specifically as the executive director? So what do you do at Love Inc.?
Sure. So I do a little bit of everything. I mean, my main, job is to oversee all day-to-day operations, make sure everything's running smoothly. That's the business side. And then the ministry side is making those connections, most specifically with the different churches that we're partnered with, which is currently we have 24 partner churches. So just making sure those contact points are healthy, sharing the vision, the mission, helping to train the congregations in what we're doing, how they can help, and just what I tell our pastors is I want to be viewed as the pastor of community outreach of their church, and be able to provide that level of service to them.
And on a more specific level, what does that look like as Love Inc.'s role? And then you're partnering with 24 of these other churches. Can you share why that model of partnering with churches, and then specifically what that looks like? Because it's going to be different for every church, right?
Yes, definitely. And so that's why we're really, our affiliate is broken down into three main modes of operation. And the biggest one really is called our clearinghouse. And that's where people come to us who are in need, and they're sent by churches. They're sent by different agencies through the advertising that we do. And they come and say, hey, I need help. There's usually a physical need that I need resources for. So we bring them in and we do about a 45 minute, almost like an interview with them, an intake, and really get to know them, the situation they're in, and figure out how we can help them. What can we do to start the transformation process? That's the core of everything we do, not to just alleviate the physical problem, but look at the whole person and say, how can we transform this situation so that this person can be operating in just a healthy, whole manner? And so that's where then the partnership with the churches come in, because each one offers a unique resource that we can guide them to, from the basics. whether it's a clothes closet or what we call a non-food pantry, to
Very popular, by the way.
father. It is. So those are the things usually that stamps don't cover. And so there's also 5 nights a week, there's a church that offers a hot meal. So, and so we have a whole list of resources. And then we also partner with, I just counted this morning, I think we're at 126 different organizations outside of the churches that we can direct people with and help them to find resources for what they need.
Which is actually a major catalyst for why I relaunched this podcast, because there's so many. So at being one of the intake coordinators, realizing, wow, there's so many organizations that I still don't, even having this podcast and talking to so many different nonprofits that I still don't know about. And I'm thinking, well, how much of the community doesn't know? And that's what's so great about Love Inc. I think when I was in college, I thought Love Inc. was literally just the transitional living house for women, which has kind of changed shape, and we'll talk about that. But it does so much more. And it's something you mentioned, which is obvious to you and to many people who are aware of it. But the reason it kind of has this hub with the churches is because it used to be each church was trying to be all things to all people.
Exactly.
And so they are trying to help in like the clothing closet and what you said of the non-food pantry, and basically trying to perform 126 of these tasks. There's crossover there, obviously, but then recognizing, okay, we're all in one town. Sure, there's different congregations, but what can each church do really well?
Exactly. And that's the heart of Love Inc. is let the people that are really good at what they do, what they have the heart, what they have the resources do, just focus on that, because it's a sense, as a pastor, it would get overwhelming when you would have people walk in the door saying, hey, I need help. And not really knowing the best way to do it, not having the full resources, not really having anybody to direct them to. And so by having this partnership, they say, yes, we have a ministry specifically for that here. Here's where you go. This is how you get started. Mm-hmm. And then it also, provides accountability, because through the intake process, we start a file through our we have a pretty neat software program that keeps track of every single resource that these people receive. So it's making sure that we manage what we have well, that the system isn't being taken advantage of, and that we can see the trajectory that these people are on and help guide and direct them. As we say, it sounds cliche, but we're giving them a hand up, not a hand out.
Which is actually extremely relevant. So many people, like I said, doing intakes there will come in, they do want a handout. And sometimes they get very frustrated when they're like, what do you mean you're not just going to give me money for what I need? And sometimes it's hard to be on the other end of that and wish that, you could just help and do more. But at the same time, I will say something that I know sets Love Inc. apart is people come in expecting essentially, DHS, for example, has its own very, there's a purpose for it there. And many times it's just data, right? It's the factual, just this. But I've been able to see when you speak to someone and let them share their story and get their heart, people come in very cold and leave. I've had many people leave in tears for good reasons. But they're like, well, someone actually listened to me. I can tell you actually care. And so, it's always a good day for me when I leave and I made someone cry.
In a good way.
Yeah, in a good way, right? But those are really special times because you're really making an impact. But one of the things you said is it's a hand up, not a hand out. And there's a phrase we use at Love Inc. called redemptive compassion. And that can be something really you can wrestle with a lot. But can you share what that means?
Yeah, definitely. And to preempt that a little bit, something we also say is that Love Inc. is a long-term problem-solving center, not a crisis service. And that's really easy to be misunderstood for what we do. And it's not saying we don't have immediate resources, but that's not the heart of what we are doing or what we're hoping to accomplish. It's that long-term relationship that we have, which brings in the redemptive compassion philosophy. And this is brought on by Love Inc. National that they've adopted and that they're training their affiliates in. And so it's built on 6 core features. And I'll just list them off real quick. The first is that we see everyone's value. Everybody has value that comes through the doors. The second is that we are committed to investing relationally in others. That just handing a bag of food to somebody isn't the goal, isn't the end of the relationship. It's just the start. The third is to try to help everyone achieve and see their God-given potential. That's why we're committed to letting them know that they are created in the image of God and they have value and worth, and that God has a purpose for their lives. That's something they desperately need to hear. The next one is that we require mutual contribution and participation, and that it takes work, that it's a partnership, and that we're not going to do all the work for these people, but that we're going to require them to go through steps, to make phone calls, to put effort in to the process as well. The fifth is that we always need to respond with wisdom and discernment. And that kind of goes back to what you had mentioned earlier of like, how do you handle these situations when you're talking with these people and you're learning their story and what they've gone through and where they're at and how they got there. And then because it takes that wisdom, it takes that discernment to say, okay, how can we help best? And the last principle is that we're there to serve in ways that transform. And I would say that's the most important, that we're after the transformation of lives, to take them from the situation they're in, to give them the tools, the resources, and the education to be able to step out and into their potential.
You mentioned just on that last note, one of the main things that actually is a part of loving. So like you said, the first thing, clearinghouse, send out to other organizations. But one of the things that loving actually does is relational ministry.
That's right.
Can you share about how relational ministry embodies these principles and how that is so transformative?
Yeah, I absolutely love our relational ministry program, ministry, because it's there to walk with people. It's looking at, okay, we've started to address the physical needs. Now, what about the other needs? What about the relational, the social, the spiritual, the emotional? Those are all components of for all of us that we need to be healthy individuals. So, and that's where relational ministry comes in. And we have a series of classes that people can work through. It's set up in almost like a college semester program where people earn their way through. It's a program that they start at the beginning and it lasts 3 years. And so at the end of 3 years, they can graduate. And so everything from basic classes about finances called Faith and Finance, teaching them, how to balance their checkbook, how to look at their finances in a healthy way, walking with them, making a budget, making a plan, to, job skills, to life skills, to cooking, to even a little deeper classes. We just started one called Shame No More, looking at their past and what they're dealing with, the trauma that people have gone through, and say, what do we do with that? How do we heal? What are the steps needed to do that inner work to help bring that peace and healing that's so desperately needed?
Do you have any stats? Because I know an engineer here,
Sure.
and everyone wants to know, what are the stats? Is there any measurable difference of people who go through this program? Is that tracked, like people who go through the program versus people who don't and just continue to come back for different services?
Yeah, and I unfortunately I didn't bring the actual hard numbers with me, and we've revamped just over this past year how we're doing the relational ministry, and so we're starting to keep track in a different way. It's just in the last year our attendance has more than doubled.
Oh, wow.
So it's proving very effective. People are coming back.
And how many?
So we have 3 main semesters, and in the summer we have a light semester as well. So for a total of 4. And so there's the potential then for 3 years to have 12 semesters that they walk through.
Okay. And how many people are in that?
Yeah. So, and it goes from, we average between 35 and 45 people per semester.
Wow. That's quite a bit.
It really is, and the majority of them are very engaged. They love coming. And one of the other unique things about how we do it is that we have a goal of having a one-on-one mentor for every student that's there. We currently have people from our community that are volunteering their time. They come out every Tuesday evening, and they come from 21 different churches in the community.
Wow.
To walk alongside these people. So it's quite amazing to see the community come together from a variety of backgrounds and churches, saying this is important to us. We want to engage on this level. We want to be there for these people, to hear their stories, to offer them hope. So I am just ecstatic about the direction that we're headed.
That's a pretty good enrollment. How many clients does Loving have that are active? Do you know? I know I didn't.
Yeah, you put me on
roughly.
Roughly, I mean, we have over 1,000 active clients.
That's a lot.
Yes,
because and I only see the intake side, so I don't know what happens after for the most part. But
right,
that's incredible, actually. So, and that's what I'll just say off the cuff, kind of one of the things I love about, actually everything I say is off the cuff. I have some planned questions, but one of the things I love about Love Inc., it's not competing with other nonprofits. Like, it's not stealing clients away. There's no competition. It's people come to Love Inc. In my mind, I'm like, go to Love Inc. first, because they've got all these other, 126, right?
Yeah.
To which any other nonprofit that serves a need really I think should be relying on Love Inc. in many ways, because like, hey, we can send people to you. Like, that's how many people find out about other nonprofits.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's our goal is to work in congruity with all the other organizations and nonprofits that are out there, because I mean, not one organization or person has all the answers and the ability to fill all the need. And so it's like, how can we again be in our niche and recognize everybody else's niche, and then support that and direct people to wherever they need to go to get the best help.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I'll bring up in the name Love Inc. stands for Love in the Name of Christ.
Yes.
And Jesus, Christ, Christian organization, that can be offensive to some people.
Sure.
Right? I mean, and mostly because people, in my mind, do a poor representation of who Jesus actually was. Most people don't have a problem with Jesus. They have a problem with people who misuse, the character, or misrepresent, I should say, the character. And what I've found, and I'll let you speak to this as well, many people come in, and one of the questions on the intake form is like, are you affiliated with a church? People are like, oh, like, do I have to be a Christian? And one of the things I love is that, no, they don't. And we don't preach at people. No. They don't have to have any statement of faith. They don't have to, there's no requirements other than, like, we're just asking this question, but they don't ever have to be a Christian or anything. And then, yes, there's a goal of like, hey, we think you'll find much more peace and satisfaction. Ultimately, it is very important, but it's not a requirement. Exactly. Can you speak to that about why that is, and how that's allowed you to do things in the community that if you were like, a church may not be able to do on them?
Yeah, and that's a great and a really big question as well. So I'll do my best to tackle it.
Sure.
As succinctly as I can. We're not just a faith-based organization. We say we're a faith-driven organization. And the very biblical model that we see presented is what drives us. That compassion that God calls us to show and to be, that care, is all, coming from God's vision for his people, right? But we don't have that expectation. Absolutely anybody is willing to come, is more than welcome to come through our doors and receive help. We don't discriminate against anybody or any walk of life. If you need help, please come see us. We want to join with you with where you're at. And again, look at that trajectory. And yes, we do believe that Jesus is the answer. We love the gospel. We love the good news that Jesus, presents. And we're unashamedly, in love with Jesus. And so we will ask, usually if we can pray with people, but we respect their decision, and there's no pressure, but we just want to extend the love that's been given to us.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of a maybe dangerous question, but I'll ask it anyway. More and more, I've found people who don't really even know what that gospel is. Mm. So for someone who's like, yeah, I know what that is, and they kind of like have this thing of like, God's kind of a jerk because of like X, Y, Z, and like you Christians are stupid for believing in it. I spend a ton of time thinking about this. Like I said, I'm an engineer, so I'm like very facts, very analytical. Some people might be like, how about you have faith if you're an engineer? But for me, it goes very deep because like I said, spend a lot of time thinking about this. But like succinctly, like what is that message? Like, you're not forcing people to believe it. Obviously, you can't force someone to believe anything.
Right.
But like for someone who's like, they think they know what the quote gospel is, but what would you say? Like, here's kind of in a nutshell.
Yeah. And so the gospel, which just means good news, that's the core, is that there's good news for us to share. And it's the belief that there is a God who created everything, who created the world, who created us, and he's utterly, fantastically perfect. That the Bible says there's no shadow or darkness in him. And because of that, he can't be anything but perfect, and he can't associate with anything that's not perfect and of his character. And as humans, I think we can all agree that we've messed up, that there's things that we've done that woefully separate us from that definition of perfect. As Christians, we call it that holiness, that set apartness. And so there is a divide between us and God. How can a perfect God associate with people who are not perfect? It's not in his character.
I mean, how come?
Well, it's like oil and water. It's like for your engineering mind, oil and water can't mix. It can't be associated with each other. Otherwise, water wouldn't be water. Light wouldn't be light. Darkness cannot exist in light. So I feel like utterly banish it.
So I feel like what gets preached a lot is like, oh, if you don't believe in God, he's going to send you to hell. Which there's kind of a nuanced thing to that, right? Like, it's like, well, so talk to like, well, what does that even mean? Like, we talk about salvation or being saved or whatever. Like, how does Jesus have anything to do with that?
Yeah. So
Jesus died for people. Like, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah, and you're really activating my geeky theological side.
Well, I'll just say
those. And so we look at that, and we say, what hope is there, right? And that's for any of you that have read the Bible, and we know that it's split into two: the Old Testament and the New Testament. And a lot of people see the Old Testament as this really angry God, and the New Testament is this really nice, loving God. The fact of the matter is, it's the same God. And that through the Old Testament, it's shown us the standard of perfection of what it would take to be in relationship with God, and is filled with stories of people not able to do it. That within themselves, they don't have the ability to live what we call righteously in the right way. Maybe for a short time, but that's it. So they keep falling out of relationship with God. They keep falling out of community with their brethren, with God. And so God set it up in such a way in saying, let me do the work. That there is a cost. That because I am a just God, because I am a loving God, because bad things are owed consequences, right? And that's why we have the entire judicial system, because we recognize, as a community that this activity, stealing, is not okay. And there's a repercussion for that. And our repercussion is death.
Brings that
It sounds harsh, but what I challenge people is, let's try to expand our view of how big and how perfect and how great God is. That if he created everything in existence, if he is, again, in that analogy of light, perfect lightness, then if he's even in the presence of anything dark, what happens? It's gone. That darkness is eradicated.
We may have lost half the audience here.
Nice. Sorry about that. Maybe. Yeah. So, and that's why God said, I have to be the one to do the work. And that's why he came to earth as Jesus. He came to live that perfect life. He came and died for our sins to take that payment, and saying, I will be the one that's willing to die and take the just payment for the wrongdoing of my children. And I will give them my perfectness in exchange.
So basically, Jesus came, he did what people couldn't do. He lived the perfect life. Then because of that, people said, well, okay, if I believe that, then somehow God's going to look at me, my record's gone, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So you steal something and the judge says guilty, and then someone else came in and said, hey, I'll take that payment as long as you accept that. Is that kind of?
Yeah, exactly. And see, I told you were activating my geeky side.
Well, maybe I should stop, because I know that pastor side of yours. But no, I just think it's important for people, because if we're talking about something that's in the name of Christ, what does that mean? And then how does that have to do anything with why are we doing this compassionate side of helping people? But we're not forcing them to.
Right, because that's the compassion of Christ.
Yeah.
That's the model that we saw when he was on earth, of how he treated people, of how he beckoned the poor and the needy and the wounded and the sick to him. He says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will come and I will give you rest.
Yeah. So kind of moving to the next stage too, and I appreciate that. And a little sorry if anyone was lost by that. I know I could talk about that forever too. It's fascinating to me. It's a very interesting, how do all the religions come together, and how I personally think there is something very different about the Christianity side of things. The whole point is you can't do it on your own. None of these books are good enough.
Yeah.
And that's why it's, it's not anything you can do, or religious things you can follow, which many people don't really understand, but it's you got to admit that you suck. That's kind of the main point. Admit you suck and you're in. That's kind of...
and saying, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I think we all, have at some point of our lives have reached that level of brokenness of saying, I can't do it, but I can't continue this way.
But at the same time, we try not to suck. We try to, follow the example. And one of those is okay, how do we help people around us? So that thing too.
Yeah.
Part of it is you see people on the side of the street that, they're holding up a sign or whatever. Some of them are the same people over and over. And I think about this as an individual or as a family unit, how do you actually help, or I say handle, it sounds kind of bad treating them like an object, but what does actual love look like? Because if you just give them the $5 every time they ask for it and they're still there, are you really doing anything meaningful? But you can't just ignore them, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that, I think we've all wrestled with that when we're approached with somebody in need, is how do we help? And we wrestle with, well, what's this $5 going to be used for? Is it enabling? Is it going to help them?
I mean, sometimes it's kind of it eases my conscience. As bad as that sounds, sometimes I do it so I can still...
So I feel better, right? Yeah, yeah. And it's an awkward conversation to have, to admit that we struggle with that sometimes, of knowing how to help and not wanting to enable. But, that's a commonality that I've, with everybody I've talking to, is we want to help. We don't want to enable. We want to know how to, again, and this is my word, but how do we help transform people, give them that hand up? And that's, there's a book that we really like. It's called When Helping Hurts.
Yeah.
And there's a quote, the author says, because every one of us is suffering from brokenness in our foundational relationships. All of us need poverty alleviation, just in different ways. Our perspective should be less about how we are going to fix the materially poor, and more about how we can walk together, asking God to fix both of us. And I really like how he phrased that of we see the physical need, we're not ignoring it, we're engaging on that level, but then we're able to use that to get to the deeper need, and to give that alleviation in the moment, and then engage with them on a deeper level and say, what's really going on? What's your story? And showing them that somebody actually cares, is, as you've experienced, we have so many people that leave that intake crying because they've never had somebody that concerned for them before. And that's heartbreaking to hear, but we see it almost every day. I didn't know and having a hard time believing that somebody would actually care that much. And that's why we're there, to show that care, to show that compassion, and to be that partner with them.
Which is difficult because that's what's needed.
Yeah.
Is and it still brings up the question, okay, what do you do?
Send them to Love Inc.
Yeah. Yeah. Which sometimes it's not, sometimes people are transitional or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's really like, without coming alongside someone, I mean, that class you were talking about, Shame No More.
Yeah.
People have to see themselves different before because if they have this perception that I'm worthless, then they're not going to ever be able to get out of that. Right. They may be able to survive from day to day with, a few bucks here and there.
Yeah.
But as long as you believe you're worthless and that you don't deserve having anything better, then no amount of $5 bills or $10 bills or whatever will ever change that.
Yeah. Can I actually, I didn't know you were going to say that, but I think that's a perfect segue. You had asked me for a success story. And is it okay if I share that?
Yeah.
Now? And this comes from our transitional living program, what we call the Hesed House, for women. And hopefully we'll be able to spend a few more minutes talking about
definitely.
that. But this came from a gal who graduated from that program. And she shared this, and our TLP director wrote it down word for word. This lady's backstory was one of worthlessness, and she has shared that her first memory of being called worthless was at the age of 4 by her dad, and it just continued and continued and continued. And she had been homeless all over the place, Portland here, before she discovered our program, and we walked her in. And I might get a little stuffy here, so I apologize.
Good thing you're talking, because I'm already starting.
Yeah, I know. I'm a sympathetic crier, so I see you teared up. And these are her words. This house has been such a blessing in my life. If it wasn't for this house, I'd probably be dead. And our director wrote, and literally she would be. That was where she was at. There were so many times that I thought my only option was just to go back onto the streets up in Portland again. It seems easier at the time, but it's not. I am so grateful to God. Thank you so much, Love Inc., for all that you have done. Thank you so much to everyone and for this program. I can't believe what he's done for me. I didn't think that God even saw me. So much bad was happening in my life that I didn't think he even saw me or cared about me. But gosh, now all these things he's done for me. He's moved mountains. I have such hope. And I can't believe that I'm moving into my very own apartment. I just can't believe it. I'm so grateful. And that's the crux of the matter, is no matter our view of where any of these people need to come from, I don't think we've come across a single individual that didn't come from a trauma background. From one reason or another, has bought into the lie that they're worthless, covered in shame, no good. And so if we're not able to step into that with them, to start showing them their worth and their value, how can they be expected to change? No amount of $5 bills or blankets or food is ever going to fix that. And so it's a long, painful, expensive, tedious project. But we're convinced it's the only way to help, is by engaging the community to step in and start living lives alongside these people. Because the reality is, we all need it. We all have levels of poverty in our own lives, in our spirit, that we need help with. For some people, it's just more apparent than others.
Yeah. So that's a success story from the Hesed House, and I'm sure there's many others like it. So, yeah, what is the Hesed House? That's a new name, isn't it?
It is. We used to operate it as like a drop-in shelter, like an overnight beds if people needed to sleep, but we weren't seeing, the transformation, the success with that. People just kept repeating the process, and this was before I came on. So this is just an overview of what I understand what happened, and so they took a step back and say, no, we have to do this a different way, and that's when they developed and it's all in the name, the Transitional Living Program. It's transitional, meaning it's not permanent. It's living because these ladies need a place to live. And it's a program because there's expectations. You're moving from one place to another, and you are in this process with us to make that happen. And so it's shown great success. Again, every lady has a one-on-one mentor through the time that they're there, that they get to walk alongside life with. There's different studies that they do. There's counselors available. There's different resources that we're able to combine with to make sure they get the help and the care that they need. Whether it's job training, whether it's help with physical conditions. And so it really is walking with them, and then going through the process of, okay, how do we heal these areas in your life that's holding you back? And then I'm going to repeat myself again, so I apologize, but then walking them through the steps, so that at the end, we have a transformed person, or at least a person well on their way to be, an effective member of society and is on the path of healing.
How many people can be in the program at one time?
Yeah, and so right now we have a maximum number of 8 beds. So it is a fairly small program, but because of the nature of what we do and the level of intenseness, it's a good size. And we've discovered that moving these ladies through in almost like a cohort manner is really effective. And so when we're looking to expand, we're hoping not to increase really the number of women in the same program, but to duplicate what we're already doing, like in another location. And that way we can, keep the cohort small, but be able to have a bigger capacity in that matter.
I almost feel like, so how long is the program?
It depends on the person. The longest that you usually stay there is a year, but it usually averages about a little over 6 months.
Okay. Yeah. And so they go through as a cohort, and imagine these women have a pretty significant impact on each other's lives too.
They do, and for good and bad, and it's risky at times, because there's different personalities. And so there's times when we do have to remove people that aren't a good fit, but it also, it gets them interacting, and, as iron sharpen irons, of being able to actually help them see that other people are struggling with a lot of similar things as well, and they can encourage each other. And it's really beautiful to see, as again, our mentors and our RAs and our directors there, encouraging them and walking them through the process and teaching them how to navigate conflict that might arise is a huge part of that.
Yeah. Now, what's the significance of the name, the Hesed House?
The Hesed House. Yeah, and so that is just in Hebrew, in the Old Testament, Hesed is used to describe God's love. And it conveys this definition of never-ending, never giving up, always faithful, enduring love that God has for us.
Is that kind of like the Greek term agape? Is that a similar?
Yeah, similar. Yeah, it has a little more depth to it in the Hebrew.
English kind of sucks when it comes to defining love. Like, well, there's just love, 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 love.
It definitely does. So yeah,
not the same. So you mentioned expansion. Are there opportunities for expansion in the future?
We would love to, and so we're looking at that, and we're in the process of saying, okay, how do we duplicate, and making sure we have the resources available. And so we've been, on a mission for quite a few years of saving and looking and praying, and trying to get the word out of what we're doing and the success of what we're doing. And we would love to be able to open up more houses in the area. And so it's on our vision board, and that's what I'm hoping as I'm coming on board here. That's been part of my vision of saying, okay, I've been here 6 months now and I see this as a need. So that's going to be a goal of mine is to hopefully, Lord willing, to drive that expansion to open up our capabilities and seek the funds to continue growing.
What are some ways that the community can get involved if they'd like to?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to our website, loveincnewberg.org, and there's a link if you want to volunteer, and you can put your information in there and we can get back to you. And we just have a variety of different, ways that you can help or volunteer. We currently work with about a pool of 60 different volunteers through all of our different programs. And as well as, if you're involved in a local church, see if they're partnering with us. And if not, man, we'd love to talk to you to see if we can develop that relationship. And of course, as a nonprofit, we're always in need of financial help so we can grow and expand and help these people around us.
Just quick, I have a couple things I want to add. As far as the giving, some people are always curious about, well, if I give to a nonprofit, where's that money going? What's that looking like? It's cool that there are so many people that are volunteers. Is there somewhere people can go and look and see what the money they give, like how much goes to one thing or another?
We do have that available. We don't have it like on our website or something, but if asked, we have that information available. Okay. And that's why we really we're trying to be as dependent as possible on the community with our volunteers and keep our actual, payroll employees as minimal as possible. Enough to do the work and to expand, but to, people have huge hearts. And that's what I've been so impressed with this community is the people that are willing to step up and do the work has just been absolutely amazing.
Yeah. You do need to be able to pay people well if you want good people who can keep the ship running.
That's right.
But one of the things I love is the flexibility with volunteers. Like if you only want to volunteer or if you only have a couple hours a month, that's kind of the case I'm in. Like I volunteer usually once a week, every other week, depending on what's going on in my schedule. But that flexibility is great because I want to help, but I can't commit hours every week, which is, I just appreciate that flexibility. Are there opportunities for like families like with kids to get involved? Like if they're like my wife, for example, is saying like, I'd love to get my kids exposed to like helping in some way. Like whether it's like packing, like welcome bags or like different things like that.
Yeah. Great question. Yeah. And there are, the easiest way to do that is again, is to partner with one of our local churches that are what we have what's called a gap ministry that provide those resources. We can help set you up if you want to help serve meals. One of the 5 evenings a week that a hot meal is provided. or if you have a heart for something in particular, whether it's welcome bags or, again, clothing or any the huge list we have, we can get you in touch with how to get involved.
Great. Thanks. Now, last question. You are kind of key, kind of in a key position in the community. It's kind of running the behind the scenes of, in my mind, one of the most significant organizations in Newberg in regards to really transforming lives, because you just are so connected. From your time here, since you've been back and being involved with Loving, what is maybe the number one or maybe number two thing that gives you hope for the future of this town?
No, it's a great question. It has to be, and I'm saying it's all based in God's grace, that the people in this community are working together in a way that I've never experienced before. In all of my moving arounds, the different churches I've been involved with, the different ministries. When I first took this position and people, were telling me about how it all worked, I was in kind of disbelief of, I can't be that good. And of course we have our issues and nothing's perfect, but I am daily blown away by the Newberg community saying, we want to help, we want to make a difference, we want to support, we want to come together. It's a truly unique community in that way. And I am so thankful for that. And it gives me tremendous hope that despite the differences that's here and we're dealing with and we're talking about, those conversations are happening and we're willing to respect each other and we're still willing to come together and say, there's still a need. Let's figure out the best way to help.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much, Thomas. It's been great getting to talk to you more about this, and look forward to spreading this good news out to our community.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. It's been just a pleasure and a joy to be here, and I'm looking forward to just a wonderful continuation of my time here and meeting new people and seeing what the future holds.
One thing I will add, just as a quick aside, there is a Loving location soon, I think, opening up in McMinnville.
That's right.
So if you're a McMinnville listener, I know this is more about Newberg, but that's also part of Yamhill County, and that'll be really significant. So if you haven't heard about that yet, reach out to Gary Ekdahl. He's kind of the one heading that up, and he can kind of fill you in on that side of things.
That's right.
Well, thanks, Thomas.
All right. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newberg so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.